Picture this: I'm sitting at my sister-in-law Emily's lavish dinner party, her crystal chandelier sparkling above. She stands, wine glass in hand, smirking. To Sarah, she sneers, our simple accountant, slaving over tiny numbers in her dull government job. The room erupts in laughter, my cheeks burn, and I want to vanish. Emily's always belittled me, her wealth a weapon to make me feel small. But tonight, something's different. My heart's racing, I'm hiding a secret she'd never suspect. Suddenly, the doorbell cuts through the mockery. Emily's smug grin falters. A deep voice booms from the foyer, FBI Special Agent Daniel Foster. I need Sarah Thompson, now. The laughter dies. Forks clatter. Emily freezes, her face draining of color. Every eye turns to me. What does the FBI want with me, this simple accountant? And why is Emily trembling? I never imagined my job would turn this family dinner into a nightmare, or that I'd hold the key to unraveling Emily's perfect world. Let me take you back to how this all began, to a night I'll never forget. Let me take you back to where it all started. I'm Sarah Thompson, a 34-year-old IRS accountant in Seattle, proud of my work but never one to brag. I've spent years crunching numbers, uncovering financial crimes, and ensuring the tax system stays fair. My husband, James, and I live a modest life in a cozy 3-bedroom home we love. We're happy, grounded, and don't need flashy cars or mansions to feel fulfilled. But my sister-in-law, Emily Carter? She's the opposite. Married to James's brother, Michael, Emily runs Carter Realty, a booming real estate empire. Their sprawling Bellevue mansion, dripping with luxury, is a shrine to her ego. Every family gathering, Emily flaunts her wealth, designer dresses, exotic vacations, you name it, while subtly, or not so subtly, reminding everyone my government job is beneath her. It wasn't always this bad. When I married James 5 years ago, I hoped Emily and I could be friends. But she saw my practical career choice as a personal slight. Once, she offered me a job at Carter Realty, promising big money. I turned it down, I didn't want to mix family and work. That's when her jabs started. Sarah, still slaving away in that cubicle, she'd say, smirking, as if my CPA certification and forensic accounting expertise were a joke. James, bless him, is kind and supportive, but when it comes to standing up to his sister, he often freezes. I've lost count of how many times I've bitten my tongue at her snide remarks about my boring life. The annual family dinner at Emily's mansion was always a test of patience. This year, I dreaded it more than ever. I'd just been promoted to senior investigative accountant at the IRS, a big deal for me. James and I celebrated quietly, with a nice dinner and a bottle of wine we'd saved. The promotion meant more responsibility, leading high-stakes investigations into complex financial crimes. I was thrilled, but I knew Emily would find a way to twist it into another jab. Government work, she'd scoff, as if her 8-figure deals were the only measure of success. Her mansion, with its marble floors and custom art, was her stage, and I was the unwilling audience. What made her condescension sting more was her ignorance of my work. I don't just push papers, I track down tax evaders, unravel fraud, and protect the system that funds our schools and roads. It's challenging, meaningful, and requires serious skill. But Emily? She'd never care to understand. To her, I was just this simple accountant, a punchline to her lavish life. As we drove to her dinner that night, my stomach churned. James squeezed my hand. It's just a few hours, he said. I nodded, bracing myself for Emily's inevitable barbs. Little did I know, my new promotion was about to collide with her world in a way neither of us could have predicted. Soon, I'd be handed a case that would change everything. 2 weeks before that fateful dinner, my life took a sharp turn. I was sitting in my Seattle IRS office, surrounded by stacks of financial reports, when my boss, Robert Hayes, called me in. His face was serious, almost grim. Sarah, he said, sliding a thick folder across his desk, you're leading the investigation into Carter Realty. We've got red flags pointing to tax fraud, millions in hidden revenue. My pulse quickened. This was the kind of high-stakes case I'd trained for, the kind that could define my career. As a senior investigative accountant, I'd chased tax evaders and unraveled complex schemes, but this felt bigger. Robert warned me, Carter Realty has powerful connections. This needs to be airtight. I dove in, working late nights, poring over bank statements, property deals, and financial trails. One transaction caught my eye, a luxury condo project in downtown Seattle with payments funneled through multiple shell companies. It screamed money laundering, but I needed more proof. I built detailed spreadsheets, cross-referencing every dollar, determined to crack the case. James, my husband, was my rock, bringing me coffee and dinner as I burned the midnight oil. "This could be huge for you," he said, his voice full of pride. I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. The investigation was set to kick off with an on-site visit to Carter Realty's headquarters the following Tuesday. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Carter Realty belonged to my sister-in-law, Emily Carter. She never mentioned her company's name around me, always dismissing my work as boring while flaunting her wealth. I hadn't connected the dots, and why would I? My job was about facts, not family drama. But as the investigation deepened, my focus sharpened. Every discrepancy I found fueled my drive to expose the truth. Robert's words echoed in my mind, this could be deliberate tax evasion. If true, someone was playing a dangerous game, and I was determined to catch them. As the dinner approached, I was neck-deep in preparations. I barely slept, my mind racing with figures and timelines. When James reminded me about Emily's annual family dinner, I groaned. The timing was awful. I needed the weekend to finalize my strategy, not to endure Emily's smug jabs about my cubicle life. I almost canceled, but James pleaded, "It's tradition, Sarah. Just one night." I relented, hoping I could keep my cool and avoid her barbs. Maybe, just maybe, my new promotion would give me the confidence to shrug off her condescension. I packed my laptop, planning to sneak in some work after dinner. Little did I know, that dinner would be anything but ordinary. My professional world was about to crash into Emily's carefully curated life, and the collision would be explosive. As we drove to her Bellevue mansion, I stared out the window, mentally reviewing my case notes. Something told me this night would change everything, but I had no idea how right I was. Soon, I'd step into a room where my skills as an investigator would face their ultimate test. Pulling up to Emily and Michael's Bellevue mansion felt like stepping into a lion's den. Their sprawling estate, with its manicured lawns and glowing fountain, screamed wealth, Emily's favorite weapon. Inside, the air was thick with her signature perfume and smug superiority. As we entered, Emily, draped in a designer dress worth more than my mortgage payment, air-kissed James and gave me a perfunctory hug. "Sarah, so glad you could make it," she purred, her smile as sharp as a blade. The great room buzzed with family, James's cousins, uncle, and Michael's parents, all sipping top-shelf cocktails from a gleaming bar cart. Emily wasted no time playing hostess, parading us through her newly renovated East Wing, pointing out custom chandeliers and imported marble like a queen showing off her castle. Her voice dripped with pride, but every word felt like a jab. "This chandelier cost more than most people's cars," she said, glancing at me. I trailed behind, wondering how much of this extravagance was properly reported to the IRS. James nodded politely, oblivious to my unease. Then, as we neared her home office, Michael emerged, slamming the door behind him. His face was pale, eyes darting. "No need to see in there," he stammered. "Just a mess of work papers." Through the crack, I glimpsed Lisa, Emily's business partner, frantically shoving documents into a drawer. My investigator's instincts kicked in. Something was off. "What kind of work do you bring home?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Emily waved a manicured hand. "Oh, just boring investment stuff, Sarah. Nothing you'd understand." But as we walked away, I overheard Lisa's hushed panic, "We need to fix these books before anyone notices." My stomach twisted. Could Carter Realty, the company I was investigating, be Emily's? The thought hit me like a freight train, but I pushed it down. I needed proof, not hunches. Back in the great room, Emily held court, regaling the family with tales of her latest triumph, a luxury condo project pre-selling at over $1 million per unit. "It's all about knowing the right people," she boasted, winking, "and bending the rules just enough." My jaw clenched. In my world, bending rules often meant fraud. I glanced at James, deep in conversation with his cousin, unaware of my growing dread. Lisa sidled up, her smile tight. "So, Sarah, Emily says you work for the government. That must be structured." Her voice trembled slightly. "It has its moments," I replied, watching her grip tighten on her glass. "Especially when we're digging into major cases." Before she could respond, Emily swooped in, linking arms with Lisa. "Don't bore Sarah with business talk," she chirped, steering her away. But I caught Michael's worried glance at Lisa, who shook her head subtly. My pulse raced. Something was definitely wrong. As we moved to the dining room, the table gleamed with fine china and silver candlesticks, a showcase of Emily's wealth. I took my seat, trying to focus on small talk, but my mind churned. If Carter Realty was Emily's company, I was sitting across from the target of my investigation, sharing appetizers like nothing was amiss. Then Emily leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "Sarah, tell us, how much does the IRS pay these days? Enough to afford a bottle of this wine?" The table chuckled, and my cheeks burned. James frowned but stayed silent. I forced a smile, swallowing my humiliation. "It's a steady job," I said evenly, "and I'm proud of it." Emily's laughter rang out, sharp and cruel. "Oh, Sarah, always so practical. Some of us aim higher." My hands clenched under the table. I was done being her punching bag, but I had to stay calm. Soon, I'd stumble on something that would turn this night upside down. The dinner was already a minefield, with Emily's barbs cutting deeper by the minute, but what happened next turned my world upside down. Excusing myself to the restroom, I took a wrong turn and found myself outside Emily's home office. The door was slightly ajar, tempting me. My investigator's instinct screamed to look inside. Glancing around to ensure I was alone, I slipped in. The desk was mostly clear, but one folder stood out, its label glaring: Carter Realty, Tax Planning 2024 to 2025. My heart stopped. This was it, the company I'd been investigating for weeks. Emily's company. With trembling hands, I opened the folder. Inside were financial projections, but not the kind you'd show the IRS. 2 sets of books stared back at me, one labeled reported, the other actual. The actual figures showed millions in revenue never declared, textbook tax fraud. My mind raced. I was holding evidence that could destroy Emily's empire, and I was standing in her house, pretending to enjoy her catered beef tenderloin. I pulled out my phone, snapping photos of the damning pages, my pulse pounding in my ears. Suddenly, the door creaked. Lisa, Emily's business partner, stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide with panic. "Sarah, what are you doing?" she hissed, her voice shaking. I closed the folder, trying to stay calm. "Just looking for the restroom," I lied, but my voice betrayed me. Lisa's gaze darted to the folder, then back to me. "You can't be in here," she said, stepping closer. "Those are private. You don't understand, this is just a misunderstanding." Her desperation was palpable, but I saw through it. "Is it?" I asked, holding her stare. "Because this looks like fraud." Lisa's face crumpled. "Please, Sarah, don't say anything. Emily will fix this. We just need time." Her plea hung in the air, but my duty was clear. I'd spent years chasing financial criminals, family or not, I couldn't ignore this. "I have to do my job," I said quietly, slipping past her. She grabbed my arm, her voice low. "You'll ruin everything. Think about James, about the family." I shook her off, my resolve hardening. Emily should have thought about that before cooking the books. Back at the dining table, I slid into my seat, my mind a storm. Emily was laughing, oblivious, pouring more wine as she bragged about her latest deal. James squeezed my hand, sensing my tension but not knowing why. Across from me sat the woman whose empire I was about to dismantle, the sister-in-law who'd mocked me for years. My phone burned in my pocket, holding photos that could send her to prison. I was torn between loyalty to my husband's family and the integrity of my work. But the evidence was undeniable, and my oath to the IRS wasn't negotiable. As Emily raised her glass for another toast, her eyes met mine, sparkling with condescension. She had no idea the tables were about to turn. I forced a smile, but inside, I was steeling myself for what was coming. The truth was closing in, and soon, it would crash through her perfect world like a wrecking ball. The dining room was a pressure cooker, Emily's cruel jab slicing through the air. She stood, wine glass raised, her voice dripping with mockery. To Sarah, the queen of mediocrity, she declared, spending her days checking numbers in a dreary cubicle while we build empires. The table erupted in laughter, each chuckle a dagger to my pride. My hands trembled under the table, the photos of Carter Realty's fraudulent books burning in my pocket. I was done being her punching bag, but before I could speak, the doorbell rang, sharp and ominous, cutting through the room like a thunderclap. Emily's smug grin wavered. "Who could that be?" she muttered, gliding to the door. The room fell silent, forks poised midair. Then, a deep voice echoed from the foyer, FBI Special Agent Daniel Foster. "I need Sarah Thompson immediately." My heart leapt. Every eye turned to me, confusion rippling across the table. Emily reappeared, her face pale, Daniel towering behind her, his badge glinting. "Sarah," she croaked, her confidence shattered. "What's this about?" Daniel's gaze was steely. "Mrs. Thompson is leading our investigation into Carter Realty," he said, his voice calm but lethal. "We've uncovered evidence of tax fraud, millions in hidden revenue." The room gasped. Michael's wine glass tipped, staining the tablecloth red. Emily's jaw dropped, her empire crumbling in real time. "That's absurd," she stammered, but her eyes betrayed panic. I stood, my voice steady despite the chaos. "I found documents in your office tonight, Emily. 2 sets of books." "It's over." Lisa, her business partner, bolted upright, her face ashen. "It wasn't my idea," she blurted, tears streaming. Emily pushed the fake invoices, the offshore accounts. I told her it was too risky. The table froze, her confession a bombshell. Michael stared at his wife, betrayal etched on his face. "You did what?" he whispered. Emily lunged toward Lisa, but Daniel stepped forward. "Mrs. Carter, sit down," he ordered, his tone brooking no argument. Then, Emily turned to me, desperation replacing her arrogance. "Sarah, we're family," she pleaded, her voice low. "Name your price. I'll make this go away." She reached for her purse, but Daniel's voice cut like ice. "Mrs. Carter, attempting to bribe a federal officer is a felony. I suggest you stop." Emily recoiled, her hands shaking. I met her gaze, my resolve unshaken. "I can't help you, Emily. The evidence speaks for itself." The room was a graveyard of stunned faces, James's cousins whispering, Michael's parents gaping. Emily, the untouchable queen, was unraveling before their eyes. James finally spoke, his voice firm. "Sarah's doing her job, Emily. You brought this on yourself." His words hit harder than any of her insults ever had. I clutched the portfolio Daniel handed me, my mind racing with the weight of what I'd uncovered. This wasn't just about family drama anymore, it was about justice. As Emily's world collapsed, I felt a strange calm. The simple accountant she'd mocked was now the one holding her fate. But the night wasn't over. The fallout from this moment would ripple through our family, and I had to face what came next. As the dining room chaos unfolded, I knew I had to step back. My connection to Emily made me a conflict of interest, so I recused myself from the Carter Realty investigation that night. I handed my notes and photos to Daniel, trusting my colleague Monica to take over. The evidence was damning: fake invoices, offshore accounts, millions in hidden revenue. Emily's empire was a house of cards, and it was collapsing fast. Weeks later, she was indicted on 17 counts of tax fraud, money laundering, and obstruction. Carter Realty's assets were frozen, her lavish lifestyle seized. Emily faced 3 years in prison and millions in restitution. Her accountant cut a deal, while Lisa, her partner, took lesser charges for cooperating. The family fallout was brutal. Michael filed for separation, his trust shattered. James struggled, torn between his sister's crimes and his loyalty to me. But something changed in him. When Emily begged him to sway me, he stood firm. "You mocked Sarah for years," he told her, "while breaking the law. She's more ethical than you'll ever be." His words, long overdue, lifted a weight off our marriage. At home, we sat quietly, processing the wreckage. "I should have stopped her sooner," James admitted, his voice heavy with regret. I leaned into him, exhausted but grateful for his newfound resolve. At work, my handling of the case earned respect. My boss, Robert, called me in. "The director's impressed with your integrity," he said. "You're up for a promotion to lead complex financial investigations." The irony wasn't lost on me. Emily's simple accountant jabs had led to a career-defining moment. Months later, a letter arrived from Emily, now awaiting trial. "I envied your integrity," she wrote. "My mockery came from insecurity. I don't expect forgiveness, but I see now what true success is, you." I shared it with James, unsure if she meant it, but it felt like a start. I later spoke at a university, sharing my story with accounting students. "Integrity matters more than technical skills," I told them. "When personal ties clash with duty, choose what lets you sleep at night." A student approached, torn between lucrative private jobs and public service. "Do what aligns with your values," I advised. "That's worth more than any paycheck." Her nod reminded me of my younger self, finding purpose in work that ensures fairness. Reflecting on that night, I felt no joy in Emily's downfall, only a complex mix of sadness for our family and pride in my role upholding justice. The simple accountant label, once a sting, now felt like a badge of honor. Over dinner, James raised his glass. "To you," he said, "for showing us what integrity looks like." I smiled, clinking my glass, at peace with who I was. If this story resonates, share your own experiences in the comments. Have you been underestimated only to prove your worth? Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing tall when it counts. Your worth isn't what others think, it's the choices you make and the integrity you hold. Thank you for listening, and let's keep doing what's right, no matter how hard it gets.